Happy New Year. It's Sarabeth Emet, and today is the 31st of December of 2025. And I don't know what time it is right now, but it doesn't matter. And it is New Year's Eve, and I am attacked by goblin terrorists. And I am working very, very hard to keep myself up and going. And I am listening to a CD of musicals. Let's leave it at that. I'm listening to a CD of musicals, and like every one of these songs is coming through me. Even if I move them around, they're still, somewhere coming through me. And well, it is a new year. It is a new year. I was looking up New World. I was looking up New World, and the library ate up my borrows. The library ate up my borrows. They tell me this is illegal, and I will leave that for others. Meanwhile, I found this soundtrack. I found this soundtrack of musicals, theme songs. I found this soundtrack, and that one I was able to borrow. Anyway, let's keep going. And I got hooked on a few songs. Ah, ah. Anyway, we have to keep moving through these. It's a new year and we're working hard. And it's a great cover album that I found. I found a cover album, not the originals. And that's even sort of funnier. But let's keep going, okay? So I found that I was connecting with the theme song to A Sound of Music, or The Sound of Music. The hills are alive with the sound of music, with songs they have sung for 1,000 years. The hills fill my heart with the sound of music. My heart wants to sing every song it hears. My heart wants to beat like the wings of the birds that rise from the lake to the trees. My heart wants to sigh like the chimes that flies from a church on a breeze, to laugh like a brook when it trips and falls over stones on its way, to sing through the night like a lark who is learning to pray. I go to the hills when my heart is lonely. I know I will hear what I've heard before. My heart will be blessed with the sound of music, and I'll sing once more, and I'll sing once more. Giving thanks to one of my great mentors, who is George O'Dowd, the great boy George. Moving on with a new life and with new dreams and aspirations, I want to celebrate. Last year, they remind me. Last year, when I was interned in a psychiatric hospital. I shouldn't even be pronouncing the whole of these words, but last year I was interned in a psychiatric hospital. And they were observing me with the possibility that I was either psychotic or paranoid schizophrenic, as though the two are one. And indeed neither. Indeed neither. And they knew this in something like a day and a half maybe. And they kept me the full 12 days of Christmas, which meant that on New Year's Eve, which is 1 year from right now, I was witnessing Teddy Swims sing Lose Control on the Dick Clark no, not midsummer, but New Year's Eve special. There was a Dick Clark New Year's Eve special. I imagine they have this special every year, and I can tell you I don't know who is performing tonight because I'm home and I don't have any cable. I don't have any network television. But last year I was interned in a psychiatric hospital and I was seeking to catch the news every morning. Every morning I would consider taking a shower. Once they offered me a shower. Once I learned how to take a shower and to wash my hair only with conditioner. I mean, they would give me a hard time until they learned not to. And I was always taking too long of a shower. I mean, it was illegal. The whole thing was illegal internment in a psychiatric hospital right here in the region where I live. Anyway, thank goodness they didn't try to transport me by an emergency vehicle someplace so far from home. Instead, I was right here close to home. And anyway, the fear, of course, keeps running. But on that night, an entire whole year ago, and I had seen these commercials, for maybe there was a CNN interesting news, something like a discussion among men. That looked interesting. And then there was something else. What network was this? I couldn't remember exactly, but it was the Dick Clark special. And luckily we found it that night. You see, one of the psychiatrists who was observing me gave me permission to write what had been my experience. I said, "You don't know my experience," I had said to him in the hallway as he gave me a 3-minute interview, or less even. He gave me less than a 3-minute interview there in the hallway. And I said, "Well, you know someone's story, but you don't know my story." And he allowed me to write my story, and I took some pages. These were coloring pages, which were left over from Christmas, and I grabbed a marker, a black marker, out of the box, and I was allowed to take these to my room, and I was allowed to write up my experience, and I gave that to the psychiatrist. Well, I put his name on it anyway. It went out to anyone, and somewhere those 5 pages were absorbed. They came back to me, but I gave them away, and they're someplace. But anyway, they're not needed anymore, and those 5 pages are some part of what saved my life. And I give thanks to all those who encouraged me and who encouraged him and others to accept them. Those 5 pages are not the whole love at all, because indeed, true malice and true evil, true crime was practiced on the 24th of December of 2024. And here we are, New Year's Eve of the 25th, and I can remember back. And I had seen a commercial on the morning news we had been watching. I knew that there would be something called a Dick Clark special, and maybe that was something interesting to watch. Maybe I had been there long enough, as it was the 31st, and I'd been there since, well, the middle of the night on the 24th, really the very early morning of the 25th, and I had been those hours, those days, like they last forever. And I had been working, I had been growing, I had been healing, I had been working as hard as I could on my own recovery, because you see, recovery isn't what was offered. It was observation which was offered, and it was determined, as I'm told, within 24 hours that I was not psychotic and I was not paranoid schizophrenic, and never was. I never was these forms of severe mental disorder. I responded in self-defense, spraying pepper spray at alleged, somewhat uniformed but frauding, as though as though police and paramedic and fire as though rather frauding, as though EMS, or as though community, or whatever they said, whatever they called themselves, as though they were the police. They were not. And they forced me to spray them with pepper spray, and so I did, because I was spraying in self-defense after a very cruel and evil man put his hands on me, creating intense fear and a fight or flight response, during which I sprayed him with pepper spray, and they did not arrest me, but they did bind me to a backboard, and they removed me from my home with no shoes, no coat, no house keys, no purse, no cell phone, which at that time was defunct and not working properly. And they interned me first in the emergency room, and they interned me in a psychiatric hospital for the whole 12 days of Christmas. They released me on Epiphany, and I'm waiting for all this to end. I'm waiting for the appropriate professionals to rescue me in all these different forms that I hear about all day long. There is a local Wheeling or township or regional investigator who helped to free me from the original internment, who helped to free me from the charges which the city of Wheeling and state of Illinois dropped. There is an investigator waiting to, he's going to climb onto the balcony where I live, and he wants to speak to me through the glass, through the window. He's going to a regional investigator, the same investigator who took the interview which I gave, which helped to free me. After I was released into police hold, they handcuffed me, and they took me to the Wheeling Police Department, and they kept me for some time until they could create the appropriate police investigation. And the officer, he took my statement and he helped to free me. And the same officer says that he's going to, in telepathy, he tells me that he wants to, he's working on day and night to create, he's got it, and yet he hasn't yet made the balcony in order to interview me. And I am capable to interview even in my pajamas, they say. But they'll give me the time. I can acknowledge them. I can change out of my pajamas. I can greet them again at the window. They're going to climb onto the window. They're going to climb onto the balcony and meet me at the window of my condo. An investigator, a local investigator who possesses the ability to receive an interview. Yes, sir. Yes, I remember you. You conducted the interview. It helped to free me. And I remember I was sitting with a different officer. We were waiting for the response. And the investigator who took my interview, I had to waive my Miranda rights. He took the interview. I was a little bit frightened. And he took the interview, and he came in and he said that the city of Wheeling and the state of Illinois were dropping the charges against me. And I was free to go. And in telepathy, I was told that it was understood that I responded in self-defense. And a year ago tonight, I was still interned. I use this word internment. I was not incarcerated. This was not incarceration. They convinced me to agree to observation within a psychiatric hospital. They encouraged me to give myself to a process, some of which turned out to be criminal. And I wrote my experience in 57 single-spaced pages. And I posted this on my Facebook. This 57 page, it takes about 3 hours to read. And it is listed in 10 increments on my Facebook on February 13th of 2025. February 13th of 2025 in 10 increments. If anyone is interested in hearing what was my true life experience of this internment, you can also watch the video, which is also posted on my YouTube, Sarabeth Emet. Look it up, Sarabeth Emet. You've obviously got it if you've got this video. But the point is, I've been telling my truth and I've been telling my story. And perhaps I've said enough. And so as I give thanks and as I remember the holiness, the sacred experience of finding Teddy Swims, I give thanks to Teddy Swims again and again, and again and again, and again and again, and again and again and again. And I'm going to one day receive recovery and rescue. I'm going to one day make contact with all of the great men who are capable and who are able. And indeed, all of the great men who helped to make me who I am. And I give thanks. And I remember where I was a year ago. And I was sitting at the table, I think it was after dinner, and I wasn't sure if I possessed the self-confidence. Did I possess the strength? I had been sitting in my room. I didn't normally spend as much time in my room. I felt that maybe it was unsafe. And so a great deal of time I spent in the day room. You couldn't go many places. You could walk the hallway. Only if they allowed you could you go into the community room, only if that was observed by staff, and that's because they had a program going, only because they had, an activity that they were supervising. So otherwise, you could walk the hallway or you could sit in your room, and that was alone and unsupervised, and maybe it was unsafe. And so mostly I would sit in the day room. That's what they wanted. That's where you were mostly allowed to be. So I would largely sit in the day room. But on that night of New Year's Eve last year of 2024, I chose to sit in my room and write up what were 5 pages of handwritten marker, the initial recollection of my experience. I had been talking in the daily morning community group about my experience, but finally I got through it enough and I was capable, and I asked permission to write up my personal experience, and I published it. I gave it to the nurse's station. They gave it to the doctor, the psychiatrist who agreed to receive it. No comment further. However, those particular pages came back to me and were, of course, mimeographed. They were Xeroxed. They were given to others. And I don't have those pages today. I gave them to my half-brother, and they moved on someplace, somewhere. Anyway, they're not as needed anymore. I wrote up this 57 single-spaced. It takes about 3 hours to read. I haven't read it. This is an interesting idea if I were to sit and read it. But, I don't have a printer, and so I'm not able to print it out. And the phone doesn't allow for that configuration. Anyway, I'd otherwise perhaps make a YouTube video of the actual reading. I think that they have the capacity to hurt me, to abuse me while I'm reading it. And so I don't have the need to read it at this time. However, I offer it to others if there is interest. And once again, I'm going to ground. I'm going to give thanks for this very special moment when I Like, I remember finishing the writing and I came into the day room. You see, I didn't realize that I'd missed the first hour of the Dick Clark special because I was used to, I don't have cable. I don't have, I'd forgotten. I don't have primetime television. I'd forgotten that primetime in the central time zone in the Chicago area begins at 7 p.m. I was used to living on the East Coast. Excuse me. No, I was used to living on the West Coast, where prime time begins at 8 p.m., as is the same on the East Coast. But really, I was used to living on the West Coast. And it's, I only had so much cable or, anyway, television. I had lived actually in Mountain Time. I lived in Denver, which I think is Mountain Time, but I didn't have any cable at that time. And so, interesting that through the course of my life so far, I've lived in all 4 time zones. I mean, this is sort of unusual. But anyway, my mind was mixed up. And I'd had some Hulu, but I don't think it helped me any. So anyway, I was off beat. I was off the line. And therefore, I missed the first hour of last year's Dick Clark's prime time New Year's Eve special, which offered 2, not just 1, performances of the great Teddy Swims, who was recently nominated for Best Artist, is it? Because in those days he had become nominated for New Artist. And I'll tell you, whether or not he wins or not, he is a great performer. He is a great artist, Teddy Swims. We want him to receive the Grammy, and yet at the same time, we will know in our hearts and in our souls that he is a great artist and therefore nominated, if perhaps as long as it takes. He is a hero. I love his work. And I can remember I was sitting at a table and it was past dinner time because, of course, it was something like 8 o'clock. And we'd even perhaps already received snack. They offered snack in this psychiatric hospital. There were 2 snacks a day and 3 full meals. Anyway, no, I give thanks for never having to go back into anything like that. But, life was present and life was capable within this psychiatric internment. It was awful. But I used it as best I could, and I gathered my strength. I pulled myself together as hard as I could, and I came into the room something just before 8 o'clock, and I said, "Hey, fellas, what do you think? Would you be interested in watching? What do you think?" I can't remember what they were watching. They may have even already been watching the show. I don't remember if they were watching a ball game, what was on that night. But I said, "Hey, does anybody," because I had this education and understanding that you can't just move people, you can't just change people, you've got to make an agreement. And so I said, "What do you think? There's a show and it's a little bit of this, it's performances. Let's find it. Do you know what I'm talking about?" And they said, yeah, we're interested. Let's see if we can find it. What do you have? Let's make the show." And they made the show. And I missed the first hour. And, in the first hour of that Dick Clark special for New Year's Eve, they showed the performance of the Teddy Swims The Door. I think this is off of his first album, right? At that time, we were listening to the first album. I've Tried Everything But Therapy Part 1. And he's been nominated for that album as well as the second. And sir, what do you have to come? Because I myself am a great fan, and I know that there are probably a great number of us wondering, well, we're here for you. We're here for you. We are these fans. And we know this to be a very capable and creative and love of a man. I mean, the love of man, Teddy Swims, giving us so much to grow with, so much to accomplish. And I give thanks And I'll always remember this great sacred moment I possessed when here we were in the hospital. Here we were finally understanding. Here we were making love, making life, making real this moment of stardom, this moment of deep and great love. And I'll always give thanks. I'll give love and thanks in stereo. I'll tumble for you. I'll tumble for you. And I'll always love you. I give thanks to my fathers. I give thanks to the great angels who've always guided me and who've always protected me, who've always helped me to grow and to live and to make me who and what I am. And I give thanks to all the help and support that I received last year in that horrific psychiatric hospital internment. The hills are alive with the sound of music, and I'll sing once more. I love you all, and I wish you all a very happy new year. Be well. Sarabeth Emet.